Hello everyone, and welcome to this shirt again. I promise I don't film all my videos on the same day. I just have like 5 shirts and I really like this one. Anyway, speaking of things we've been doing a lot lately, we've been looking at a lot of Dell Latitudes. Coincidentally, while wearing this shirt, it might be a curse. But while I was wearing this shirt actually the other day, I found another in the e-waste, so we might as well continue our streak of looking at Dell Latitudes every few videos. I'm gonna need to replace the rubber feet on it because they've started to disintegrate and they are leaving black marks all over my workspace. Lately, I've looked at some E4000 series machines and some E6000 series machines, but it turns out there is an E5000. So I looked into what the names mean. E4000 and E6000 are, that means it's in a metal case, and the 4 or 6 denotes the size of the machine. The E5000 is in a plastic case, and the case is indeed plastic. But that's not the only thing different about this machine. On the inside, it's actually a lot different than the E6400 or, any of the other Dells I've looked at, because it's actually a 15-inch laptop opposed to the 14-inch, 13-inch, 12-inch, and okay, that 15-inch Precision that I've looked at recently. So yeah, we're going to look at this series of Latitude that I've never covered on the channel, and let's get right into it. I would like to note that I believe this to be a little older, actually, than the E6400. The case looks good from the top, and, from the lid side, it also looks pretty good, but the plastic case does lend itself to scratches, which, of course, take away from the what am I trying to say? The appearance, that's the word. Now, I picked this up in really good condition. It had a sticker on the top that said TV Cart 3, so I believe that this will pretty much serve one purpose its entire life, never moved from that TV cart, and was very infrequently used. But the keyboard area very much is familiar if, you're familiar with other Latitude designs of the era. Windows Vista sticker, so it is older than the E6400, and Core 2 Duo instead of Centrino sticker, another clue that it's older. Also, the exact CPU that's in there is an older model. Same speaker grill design, exact same keyboard. We have a reasonably large touchpad. Only 2 buttons is a little disappointing though, and the same control area. Even the hinge covers are plastic, and honestly, in my opinion, that's the worst part to make plastic. It's not like the actual hinges are made out of plastic, but still, the outside of the hinges still provide a good amount of structural support. So if they're plastic, once you open and close it enough times, too much force is going to get put, and that will snap. We have no webcam, but I bet there was an optional webcam you could buy. Here is our ambient light sensor, and here's our display. Now this is 1280 by 800, and I love that resolution, but I don't love it on this notebook. As aforementioned, this is a 15-inch notebook with a 15-inch display. 1280 by 800 looks great on the 12-inch and 13-inch Latitudes that I have, but the 14-inch E6400 that I have has a 1680 by 1050 display. So the fact that they're going back to 1280 by 800 on the 15-inch Latitude, well, it just doesn't look that good. You can, even when sitting at a reasonable distance, it looks grainy. So that is really my only big complaint. That's not something I can easily fix. Now, getting to complaints I can easily fix, the CPU is slow, but I have some replacements in this little box, and we will do that later. Now, going back to the fact this was on a TV cart, I now see why this was a perfect laptop to hook up to that CRT. On the side here, we've got pretty typical I/O. We have USB 2, modem optional, and Ethernet, and VGA, but here we've got a serial port. That's not typical for an early, or sorry, for like a mid 2000s laptop. That would have been more of an early 2000s, late 90s kind of thing. But here's the most interesting part. S-video. You never really see that on many laptops at all. It is an analog video standard. For those who do not know, it's kind of similar to VGA, but it's more popular on higher end consumer grade video equipment. Like camcorders, that sort of thing, used S-video. Again, it's not usually a thing you see on a laptop. We have a PC card slot, not express card, so that's another clue. It's a bit older. On the front, we have screen latch, SD reader hooked up to the USB 2, and a hardware wireless switch. Over here, we have the power plug, which I think that's a little inconvenient. I prefer the later Latitudes that have the power plug up there. Also, the fan is in this area instead of over here. So that kind of gives us a clue of where the motherboard is, as does the shape on the back here. But back to the side, we have a 9.5 millimeter optical drive, IEE 1394 headphone and mic, and 2 more USB 2. That's it for I/O. So I say we look at the inside now. So the bottom is laid out similarly to other Latitudes, but normally the whole back would come off. This removable section would extend to over here. So that leads me to believe that this machine is mostly empty. And I don't really like laptops that do that. I don't like 15-inch laptops that don't actually take advantage of the 15 inches to fit a good amount of hardware. So that means over here, pretty much all we have is an optical drive. About 1 out of every 4 things I pick up from e-waste I actually show on the channel. So if you think something is bad that I pick up from e-waste, at least it's not the other 75%. Now this screw, another minor grievance, it's not captive. Like there's no mechanism that keeps it in the back, like other Latitudes, like the metal Latitudes. Also, the plastic case adds extra thickness. It's like 3 to 4 times as thick in some areas as the metal case, which that sounds like a lot. It's really not, but it makes it considerably thicker. It's like 30% thicker than the metal ones. So it's definitely a lower cost machine. Although I really do like this fan. This is actually one of the best laptop fans ever. Like this design, they're exceptionally quiet. Now this is not the original wireless card. I actually used it for testing my projector, and the wireless card was so slow that I considered it unusable, and I put a new card in. The one that it came with was too slow to stream 720p YouTube without frame drops. I was only getting about 2 megabytes per second up and down. And with this new card that I put in, I'm getting over 4 times that speed even on my not too fast school network. So yeah, no, that is not the original card. The original card was some Broadcom deal, which of course would have been a decent lower cost option when this machine was first released, but 15 years later just isn't usable. Now on the inside, note that we do have this metal shielding underneath the plastic case, so that's what adds thickness. They still have to put metal shielding underneath the plastic case, and that is one of the advantages of a metal case, is that it can just be metal. You don't need any additional metal shielding. Now the main reason why I'm opening it up is so that I can swap the CPU. See, the CPU currently in here, I should take the battery out before swapping the CPU. The CPU currently in here is a 2 GHz Core 2 Duo. I believe it is a T-series chip. So I will be upgrading to a later P-series Core 2 Duo of a higher clock speed, because 2 GHz is not that fast, even for a Core 2 Duo. I have a couple Core 2 Duo laptop chips that I've taken out of other laptops, and they're not doing anything right now. So I figure I might as well, upgrade this one with just some spare parts that I have. Because this is not a laptop that I want to spend a lot of money on, considering it's not particularly high-end, and I already have a bunch of better Latitudes to have fun with. Now, I don't know what is still keeping it on. None of those screws are actually still screwed in, except for that one. That was the issue. I spoke too soon. Wow, that is an exceptionally clean heatsink, other than that one, little piece of dust that was on here. Yeah, this thing was like never used. Jeez. There is like no dust inside this thing. Also, I've already upgraded to a 128 gig Samsung SSD that I just had lying around. There we go. So this is a... Ooh, yeah, no, that's not a very fast CPU. So this is a T7250, 2 gigahertz, 2 megs of cache, 800 megahertz front side bus. Now the chipset in here theoretically should support either of these two P-series CPUs, a P8400 and a P8700. So the P8400 is 2.26 gigahertz, and the P8700 is 2.53 gigahertz, and both of them are 1066 megahertz FSB with 3 megabytes of cache. Now, of course, I want to install the fastest possible CPU it will take, and if it'll take the P8400, I think it'll also take the P8700, because that would be odd were it not compatible with both. But still, I thought I'd bring along both in case something goes wrong. Currently in here is 4 gigs of RAM. I don't plan on upgrading it since this isn't a machine that I would need more in. Yep, it works. Okay, so now that I know it works, it's time to whack our heatsink back on, of course after I scrape off this old thermal paste. If you're ever repairing one of these old Latitudes, only put thermal paste on the CPU. The chipset, or if it has an NVIDIA graphics card, the graphics card, both need thermal pads, because the heatsink was made for thermal pads. The space between the heatsink and the chipset is too big if you use thermal paste, and that space won't get filled, so you'll actually get horrible performance if you replace it with thermal paste. It'll be worse than the original dried out thermal pads. So now that I've made a considerable upgrade to a CPU that is about a gigahertz faster combined across the two cores, has slightly more cache, and has a faster front side bus, now it is time to power it on and see what it can do. So we can see in Task Manager we have our P8700 CPU in here and running. Next up is trying out the keyboard. Now, trying out so that I can show you, I've of course already used this a bit. An interesting thing to note is I now have like 6 different old Dell Latitudes or Precisions with similar keyboards, and they all look almost exactly like this, but none of them feel exactly the same. They all feel pretty similar, but they all have a slightly different feel. So I don't like this keyboard. It's actually my least favorite out of all the Latitudes I have. The keys feel mushy, they feel unresponsive because they actually need a lot of pressure to actually register. And again, I'm sure I could swap in a keyboard from a different machine or just buy one online, but I feel like it's worth mentioning that the rubber key mat in this keyboard is definitely not the best. I guess that goes back to what I was saying earlier about this being a lower cost machine. Similar specs to the E6000 series, but just made at a lower cost, hence the plastic case, the bad keyboard, and the slower CPU from the factory. And here is, of course, your 1280 by 800 screen. as I said earlier, 1280 by 800 is kind of a low resolution for a 15-inch laptop. It does still have good color and contrast though, so if that's what you care about over resolution, it really is not too bad of a display. I would say the display has aged pretty well. And again, old Latitudes aren't really known for having good speakers, and this one unfortunately does not either. They're not horrendous, but they're really not that good either. I'd say overall, although it definitely is not my favorite Latitude, it isn't a bad laptop at all. Again, the plastic case adding a little extra thickness and these annoying scuffs to my desk that I'll have to scrape off, is not quite my favorite, but I'll definitely find a use for this. It keeps most of the features of the E6000 series and most of the design and build quality as well, while cutting down on cost from being in the plastic case and omitting some features that would not have been needed, such as the NVIDIA graphics card in the higher-end E6000 series, which, by the way, is why this machine only has analog out, because the Intel graphics at the time, up until the Core i5 series, the first Core i series CPUs, were only capable of analog output as far as I know. So that is why the higher end models have DisplayPort, and this only has VGA and S-Video as a side note. But anyway, that is where I'm going to wrap up this video. Glad I picked this little thing up, and I will definitely have some fun with it. But thank you everyone for watching. As mentioned earlier, tons of other Latitude laptop content on the channel, so if you are interested, go check it out. But for today, that is all, and thank you for watching.